Close your eyes. Really close them. Think back to any memory from long ago. Is the memory faded? The color in memories always seems more faded in one's mind than how it happened in real life. And if you don't remember the colors at all, you fill them in. Waltz with Bashir is an animated documentary that points out how traumatic events can alter our perception of what unfolds. The illustrations use a limited cutout style instead of a direct animation and focuses more on subjective feeling than objective representation of real-life events. How does animation construct and differentiate real-life experience despite being an artificial representation of truth? How does animation create distance between animated representation and real life? And how does the distance enhance the indexical nature of the subjects? Why and how were animated cutouts chosen versus rotoscoping to represent real life in this animated documentary, especially in relation to Tower? To dive further into this, we'll be joined by the David Polonsky, art director and lead animator of Waltz with Bashir.
My name is David Polonsky. I'm an illustrator. I'm based in Tel Aviv, and I was the lead illustrator or production designer for Waltz with Bashir.
In scenes with limited coloring, like the memories of Boaz, Fulman, and Carmi, we can tell that the colors help express what the characters felt at the time. As Polonsky states, the yellow-orange color in the dog and Shaba and Shatila massacre scenes express the fears and danger of war that Polonsky personally remembered as a child. I found these scenes particularly striking because they countered the other depictions of memory from people like Frenkel and Ronnie, who had memories in a fuller range of color. Their memories are more realistic, where the other three are either dreams and or subjective and dramatized memories. In my mind, I see it as a difference between whether one has fully come to terms with their memories. How do they express their memories as objective and not subjective, even though they are subjective memories? Ronnie and Frenkel have come to terms with their memories, and their memories are highlighted as more objectives than the other characters. Carmi, Fulman, and Boaz memories purposely stray from realistic scenarios, therefore the illustrators had more free range to use subjective coloring. They fill in the colors to what the characters felt. People can fill in the gaps of memory when prompted to believe that they were at a specific event. It is similar to the animators filling in colors that they haven't seen before. The colors further highlight the different impact these scenarios had on each character.
The main use of color in the film does have a lot to do with memory, and that's the motif of this orange-yellow glow. And it appears in the title sequence with the dogs in the beginning. And everything is bluish gray, but the skies and the eyes of the dogs are this burning yellow. And that's actually the color of the illumination flares that came out of the sky. And you know, incidentally, that image of the flares is the only recollection that I have of that war. I was 8 at the time, so I wasn't really aware. But I grew up in Haifa, which is a city town in the north of Israel, really close to Lebanon. As a kid, I remember those flares over the sea. I don't know who shot them or why, but they would just shoot them, and I would see this chemical burn, because it's phosphorus or something like that. It's not fire. It's like it's like a radiation, and I felt that it's a good metaphor for repressed memory that you can't really bury, because it's this kind of fire that you can't put out with water. You can bury it in the ground, but it's an internal reaction, so it keeps burning. So it keeps burning throughout the film until we reach the source of the burn. It appears in the opening sequence, and then we see the flares in the reoccurring scene where they're coming out of these Ari's imagination that are in this at the beach, and the flares are coming down, and everything is yellowish. And the last third of the film, this color takes over because we reach the source of the repressed memory, and that's the massacre.
As the hook of the documentary, the opening sequence of Waltz with Bashir introduces the audience to the point of entry into the film's narrative, as well as the way the viewers should approach the film. Preceding any expository efforts such as dialogues or interviews, we are shown a sequence of rampaging dogs with a limited color palette comprising of mostly gray and yellow that charts an emotional cartograph that serves as the through line of the movie. Moments later, it is revealed to be a dream sequence from one of the interviewees, Boaz. Through the opening sequence, the filmmakers expose the underlying artifice of its own retelling and reconstruction of personal experiences. Echoing Polonsky's remarks, this introduces a distance between the indexical truth and the animated realm to the audience.
But the rotoscoping didn't work because when the movement is too realistic, when you really follow every little change of perspective and every micro expression, you feel that the photograph, the video behind the drawings, you see that it's rotoscope. You feel it more than you see it, and then it betrays our purpose, which is to say that this is a memory. It's not a reconstruction. It's not a. We didn't. That's the big difference between animation and the reconstruction scene in a live documentary. Because no matter how well you do it, the viewer still knows that these are not the people that you are talking about. These are other people playing the people in the story, and you can't unknow that. And you don't have that problem with drawing or with drawing or animation, because to begin with, we know that these are not real people. These are drawings, and if you remind the viewer that there were real people reenacting, you break this illusion. And that's why we try to do it. The animators watched in cases that they did have video references, which is in the interviews. The Talking Heads interviews were video.
Here, animation serves as a metaphor for Ari's personal journey of finding lost memories. Just like Ari is kept from his personal truth, animation keeps the viewers at arm's length from documentary's claim to objective truth. Instead, it foregrounds the subjective, almost ever-changing personal experiences. In its inventive reimagining of real-life events, animation gives form to personal experiences and memories, and offers the audience the vocabulary to contextualize its content and understand its complexity. Animation honors and gives power to personal memories, and through animation, memories come to be defined in visual terms. By placing recollections and interviews in the same vein, the animation gives memories weight and meaning, transcending it into an experience that can be articulated, understood, and felt through visual language for many others.
So for our scene for analysis, we want to focus on that last sequence in the monochromatic orange washout where the camera goes through the streets after the massacre and then cuts right to documentorial footage of the bodies and of families crying in the streets. And compare that to the first act of shooting in Tower. The biggest difference, which Polonsky discussed, was the difference in animations. We have cutouts moving in Waltz Bashir, and we have the rotoscope in Tower. To Polonsky, his argument is the rotoscope adds a veneer between reality and fiction, but because audience members know that reality is beneath the image, because these are actors and the audience recognizes that these are actors going through a predetermined set of emotion, they crave the video instead. And in that, a barrier to intimacy is created. That there is an in-between state that audience members just cannot connect to. Additionally, in Tower, these rotoscoped images are meant to show a reality, a truthful occurrence, that these are real victims and this occurred to them. In Tower, rotoscoping serves to supplement the indexical image, that we can see the bodies strewn on the floor, but we not see the gunshot itself. The rotoscope then is a depiction of reality of the gunshot, because we do see a real body being shot just in animated form, but because of that veneer, you recognize that it's a supplementation rather than authentic representation. Waltz of Bashir instead refuses to indicate that the truth of which is objective, because it is a memory or it is a dream. animation serves to highlight the fact that this is a subjective representation. That, for example, when you go through the streets, you know that at the end of the day, this is Ari's memories, which makes it all the more powerful when the rug is pulled from underneath you and there is a hard cut to documentorial footage. Here you see women crying, you see the reality of the destruction, and in that you recognize the limits of animation. If something is rotoscoped, you know that there's a layer in between. But here, there is no mediating layer, except, interestingly enough, the animator themselves. While we think Waltz of Bashir posits the documentorial footage as an objective truth, interpretation exists of which this is a subjective truth. That because these shots were edited, filmed through a camera, cut, and included as a specific sequence by the editors, that this too is a subjective reality. And in that, this depiction, this index, is still it's true, and maybe a little bit more true than the animation, but nonetheless still subjective, just like what came before it.
I'd say that there really isn't any conceptual difference between illustrating telling through a visual medium a story of a hallucination, a dream, or a memory, and I think that the core idea of the film. And in both cases, well, for sure, when you're depicting a real event, you have some obligations for the documentation of the actual, geography, people, all of that has to be, and of course the story. But it still is a story, and I'm trying to tell it visually in the best way I can, and it's the same with the dreams, actually, or the hallucinations. The text was very clear. For example, this guy dreams about the big woman from the sea that comes and takes him away and takes away his virginity, and he watches all his friends blow up in the ship. So all of it was written there, and I'm telling the story of the dream quite the same way I would tell this a depiction of something that really happened, with the slight difference that but both things are made up. But in one case, my reference is photographs, and the other case, my reference is the cultural context of the story, or of the dreamer, or something like that. So, for example, if we take again this scene with the boat as an example, so the boat is based on a photograph, right? And it needs to look like a civilian vessel from the early 80s.
The Love Boat.
Yeah, they called it by the way, they called it a love boat, but actually they were kind of fishing boats or big yachts. It wasn't really a ship; it was more like a big yacht. So that needs to be sort of it relates to something that needs to look correct for the story to feel right. And then the woman that is coming out of the sea is kind of this wet dream of a teenager. Basically, she needs to look like stereotypical and objectified and all of those things, because that's the mindset of a young soldier.